On this episode of Self-Love Ignited, I am talking with Jacqueline Rose, and we are talking all about how the juggle does not need to be a struggle. Jacqueline knows all about the juggle. She is a mom of 5 kids. She is a yoga teacher, and her mission is to support and empower women to improve their own health and well-being. She is passionate about changing the way women understand and experience their menopause journey and supports them to navigate this time of life with ease, joy, and confidence. Jacqueline has so much wisdom, both from her own life and from her trainings. Let's get into it. Let's talk all about self-love and letting the juggle not be a struggle. My name is Katie Allen, and this is Self-Love Ignited. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Self-Love Ignited podcast. Today, I am joined by Jacqueline, and Jacqueline is a super inspirational woman who is joining us. Before we get into all the juicy bits of the story, Jacqueline, I just want to welcome you and invite you to tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Katie. I'm so happy to be here with you. I am Jacqueline. I am 46, a married mama of 5 kids. I am originally from England, but I now live in Israel, and I've been here 22 years. And I am a yoga for women's health teacher, a menopause coach, and a passionate women's health advocate.
I think the fact that you are a mama of 5 kids and you do all of these other beautiful things on top and you have kept your sanity, like you're an inspiration straight off.
Thank you. The sanity may be a bit in question at the moment, but yeah.
Fair enough. Yep. So this podcast is all about self-love and like that inner transformation and telling the stories of women who have come from a place of maybe not liking parts of themselves, not respecting or not honoring parts of themselves, to really embracing all parts of them. So I really just want to invite you to tell your story. It usually helps to just sort of start at the beginning. Tell us about your challenges, where they started, and what that sort of looked like for you.
Yeah. So until you actually gave me the language of self-love, I had experienced my story in terms of what I needed for myself, but I didn't phrase that as a self-love thing. I phrased it as, this is what I need to be able to show up in the way that I want to show up. So I really love the language that you've used to help me personally reframe it as a self-love thing. So I started my professional career in the environmental field, and I worked in the environmental field for about 20 or so years. However, in 2013, our eldest was, and I was just about to turn 40. Our eldest was diagnosed with cancer, and I was pregnant with our youngest. So we had a lot going on in our lives for about 9 months, during which time we were busy with treatment and, dealing obviously with a sick child and giving birth to a 5th child and all the craziness that involves. So the actual fact that we ended up receiving a cancer diagnosis for a child was not so shocking because we have a lot of cancer stories in our family. So that actually for me wasn't the big sort of wake-up call in a way, because I was familiar with the cancer language, and even though it wasn't something that I expected, it was something that I was familiar with. So it wasn't sort of that big shock that I know a lot of people experience. And when that happens, you sort of go into coping mode, and we did, and we coped very, very well. And then thank God, today she is a very feisty 18-and-a-half-year-old. So, we survived that. However, there were repercussions in ways that I didn't really expect. And that was that, a few months later, when that was all over, there was a feeling of, okay, what do I really want for myself now? There definitely was some post-trauma sort of breakdowns of, you know, you come through that, and I think your body then goes into shock as to what you've been through. And I realized that the life that I had been living until then, the busy, the running around, the juggle, the, you know, dropping kids off at school, running to work, having to run back from work, picking kids up, that insane life that so many of us live, I didn't really want that anymore. And it was just this slow awareness that that really wasn't serving me anymore. And it wasn't allowing me to show up in the way that I now wanted to show up as a mama of 5, with decisions that I wanted to make about our family life and my own, what I needed for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that your daughter, you know, got through that and recovered, and that she's happy and healthy, and that, you know, everybody's come through, and that as a result, you sort of had that wake up of like, this isn't what I want. I need to do better. I deserve better. Like, it's time to rethink what life looks like. And I think quite often it is a tragedy or a traumatic event that will spark those in people. You know, I've spoken to so many women on this podcast who have similar stories, right? It's an illness or a death or a divorce or something like that.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I have a psychologist, a child psychologist friend, who I talk to a lot about what my kids are going through now during this last year. I believe very much that there will be some type of post-traumatic stress syndrome, some type of PTSD that our kids would experience. And she said to me, sometimes trauma actually results in post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And really interesting reframe. And I think that in hindsight, looking back at my journey, it's possible that that's what happened. There is some type of trauma, but if you can take that trauma and use it as a growth trigger, then it becomes a life lesson rather than this terrible, awful thing that happened.
Yeah. And that, what a beautiful reframe, because the fact is that every one of us is going to have trauma in our lives. It's part of life. As much as we would like to avoid it, it's going to happen. And if you can, maybe not in the moment, but maybe in hindsight, look back and see how it maybe, helped you grow, or was that kick in the butt that you had really needed. It's such a different and more useful and beneficial way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so I really lived my life in my 30s according to the mantra of, if you need something done, ask a busy person. And I was that busy person. That was sort of how I functioned. And I know how so many people function. How live by the mantra that every woman's life is a juggle, just because that is how we are. But the juggle does not need to be a struggle. And by understanding much more, and obviously through my journey in the world of yoga and yoga for women's health, and really understanding how the woman's body works and hormones and that whole sort of conversation, I now realize that the only thing constant in a woman's life is change. But we need to find the balance and be the anchor within that change. So whatever that is, however we, you know, every woman needs to figure out for herself, accept that there is going to be challenges, accept that life is a juggle, accept that we have we're multitasking and we have lots of responsibility. But how do we balance that? How do we create the lifestyle that allows us to do that and still protect us, our own physical, emotional, and mental health?
Yeah, definitely. So Jacqueline, I want to know how you did it.
What's my secret?
Yeah, what is your secret? No, but I mean, I'm curious what this looked like for you, because here you were, you just had your 5th child, your eldest was getting over this illness, you had this realization that this isn't what you wanted. So how did you start, like, putting yourself first, putting those needs first, putting your wants and your desires as an important item on the priority list? Because that is so difficult for so many.
Yeah. And I will tell you that it didn't start intentionally. It sort of started, and I really feel that I've been guided along my journey. None of this was planned, when I was 20, 21 in university, I wanted to be in environmental education. I wanted to change the world through the environmental field. The yoga and women's health was not, the thing that I wanted to do. I think obviously I had to live a little and experience life a bit. And I've slowly come to this profession and lifestyle choice. So once our daughter was back in school and she was sort of back to some type of normality, and our baby was at an age that I was happy to send him out to childcare, I decided I just wanted to do something for myself. And it really was, the gods directing me to choose, for a whole bunch of different reasons, to be a yoga instructor for pregnancy and birth. There's a very well-respected course here at the National Health Institute, our National Health and Sports Institute here in Israel. And I just decided, I've had 5 kids. I know something about being pregnant. I know something about giving birth. I've practiced yoga off and on. I just, for some reason, I decided this was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be, I think also because I was still within the year of giving birth, it was sort of like, I was still in that mindset. So I did this course, and it was 1 day a week, leaving my house early in the morning, driving up to the institute and studying to be a yoga for pregnancy and birth instructor. And it was the most profound 4 months of my life that really changed the direction of my life, because it was the first time in 20 years that I was doing something for myself. It was like I was back at university and I was out of the house, and it wasn't, that I'd been a stay-at-home mum for the years before then. I've been a working mother all my life, and I've worked, since my university days. But there was something profound at this stage of my life, at the age of 40, going back to university and doing something purely for myself. And I discovered that I knew nothing about being pregnant. I knew nothing about giving birth. I knew nothing about my body. I knew nothing about connecting to my body. I'd studied biology at high school and I'd always enjoyed it. But all of a sudden, I'm now connecting to what it means to be a woman from the physical perspective, from the emotional perspective, from the biological perspective. It changed. It really was the start of my journey. And when I finished that training, I started teaching straight away. And I realized that I had a mission and a message that I wanted other women, especially first-time mothers, to know that I hadn't known in, all my years of being a woman and being pregnant and giving birth. So that really was where things started.
I think that's amazing. That's amazing. That's so inspirational, because there's so many women who think, oh, after I have kids, I can't start a new career, or I can't do this. And it's like, you had 5 and you did it. Like, of course, like It's never too late if you decide, if you decide that that's what you want.
Yeah.
So when you were in this place where you had made that decision of, I want to go back, I want to study this, this is something that I want to do for me. Did you have, like, I'm curious if you remember what was happening in your head. Like, did you have guilt? Did you have those thoughts of like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or I can't do this?
No, I am very blessed to have a very supportive husband who really makes those decisions easier for me. Even though he works full time, we've always tried to figure out, like, if I need something or I need extra time, or now today when I'm working a lot in the evenings and I'm teaching, in the evenings and working with women in the evenings, he tries to be around more. Like I feel that both of us have made conscious life choices for how we want our family life to be, and how we want to bring up our kids, and the type of atmosphere we want to bring up our kids up in, and the values we want to impart. So my husband actually is in education, and that has allowed him some flexibility. He's actually said for years he would be happy to take a part-time teaching job in a school if I wanted to go and be a high-flying career woman, in corporate, in environmental corporate, Americans, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I haven't, because obviously I want to be around, but there were always decisions that we made together And those decisions definitely come at a price. You know, I have made career decisions and he has made career decisions that are conscious decisions, but there is a decision-making process that comes at a price of certain things that you're not going to be able to do in your career because of the choices we've made. So at that time when I was doing this course, he was very happy for me, and I started. And I very soon realized that I did not want the lifestyle that I had had. I didn't want that running around anymore. I didn't want those levels of stress that were not dependent on me. I didn't want to be stuck in traffic when I was trying to come home and collect my kids and just feel more and more frustrated because those were not, it wasn't a decision that was that I was in control of in a way. It's a bit OCD, but at the same time, it's, you know, I know we can't control anything in our lives, but there was an element of, I want to create the life that suits me. I don't want it to be dictated by a boss or by someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to hear more about what happened. You said you finished those 4 months, you started teaching
Yes.
right away. I want
Yes.
to hear about the evolution of you taking a risk, you taking this chance on yourself, and it has blossomed into this beautiful business that you have helping women. So tell us a bit
Yeah.
more about, tell us more about that.
Okay, so I started working straight away. I did not leave my environmental job. I was working in an environmental NGO. And actually, as I knew that it was going to take a while for the yoga to pick up and to be a substantial thing. So I actually went and spoke to my old boss and said, maybe I could get a part-time job back in my old, the old NGO, and do that while I was building up the yoga business. And I did that. And I actually worked in the NGO for a year while I was, building up the pregnancy, the yoga pregnancy, and doing all of that. And then something happened that made me realize, no, this is not going to work. I was at a kindergarten party for I think it was actually child number 4, at a kindergarten party at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I was getting WhatsApps from my boss, messages from my boss about something that had to happen tomorrow. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, I'm being texted by my boss. I'm working in an NGO, so I'm not earning a huge amount of money. At 4:30 in the afternoon, this is not life. This is not life or death situation. And I'm not earning enough money to be at someone else's beck and call at 4:30 in the afternoon when I want to be attentive to my kid at this kindergarten party. And that really was the tipping point when I realized that this wasn't working for me anymore. Like, if I'm going to do the yoga thing, if I'm going to intentionally create the work-life balance that is going to suit me and that is going to allow me to show up in the way that I want to show up, I'm not going to be, I prefer to be earning the same amount of money and be my own boss, and maybe I'll be able to earn even more money. Working at NGOs is not particularly lucrative. But it was just that tipping point at that time. And so when that happened, I decided the year later to go full in and do a year's teacher training in this health. And that really was sort of the launch pin for really changing everything about what I do and how I function. And that really was the critical sort of moment when I made that decision to go full in on this and to really become much more proactive in the decisions I was making about myself, my health, how I want to show up, the work-life balance, the family life I wanted to create. And in your language, I guess that was the moment when I chose self-love over anything else. But at that time, that wasn't the sort of mindset I was in.
Yeah. And I love, because that is one question that I ask everybody who I have on the podcast, right? Is like, would you call this a self-love journey? Because for some people that really resonates, and other people are like, nah, not at all, right? It can feel like a sticky term.
Yeah.
And I love that you say at the time it wasn't, but now looking back, it's like, oh yeah, because that is a beautiful, loving thing to do for yourself. Yeah. So I think there's this idea.
Yeah, and it's a decision that you can't necessarily, if you are in a relationship and if you have responsibilities, it's not a decision. You need to have the support of your partner. You need to have the support of the people around you, because, as I said, there are always prices to pay when when you make life decisions. So yeah.
Yeah, there are. And since you started, since you made this decision, since you've started prioritizing yourself, how has this influenced your other relationships, whether it's with your children or with your husband or with your friends? Like, what else has changed in
Yeah.
your life?
So, well, I would say that it's a bit ironic that I went into the field of yoga, and very ironic from my family, because I'm not the calmest of people. And my husband says I have a yoga voice and I have a family, loud, very exuberant voice, and he'd like to hear the yoga voice more in our family life. But yeah, it really, I discovered that I needed it. A part of it was a very selfish decision, because even though I've turned it into a profession, and even though I've turned it into a passion, I actually needed it for myself. I needed the yoga. I needed the connection to my own self. I needed without even necessarily realizing it, but as I did the teacher training for, to be a yoga for women's health teacher, you go on a journey. You really go on your own journey of discovery. The course is not just about you doing this thing to become a teacher. It's about the journey that you personally go on. And I realized that I needed that space for myself. And as I've got older and my kids have got bigger and my responsibilities have grown, and also as I've discovered, because now I work a lot with women on their menopause journey, and women in midlife, they just biologically, we need more time for ourselves. And a lot of women don't understand what's going on in their bodies, and they're they've got the juggle, they've got the multitasking, they're pushed and pulled in all different directions. And then biologically, as our hormones are changing, we become more inward focused. And there is this really big sort of push and pull of what people are demanding from you and what you are demanding for yourself. And because now I'm in that world and I understand it, I understand that I need more time for myself, despite the fact that there are more people who need more of me. So that yoga space and at least the awareness of what it is that I need has allowed me to intentionally create this work-life balance where I give myself the space. Every Saturday night, Sunday morning, I look at what the week ahead has in store for me, so that I can plan out and I can make sure that it's not, run, meetings. If I've got, work responsibilities or I've got family responsibilities, I make sure that there's space in between. And it's just the awareness of what I need to be able to show up and function in the way that I want to show up as a mother, as a wife, as a entrepreneur. That there are all these things that I now am acutely aware of. Whereas before, as I said, the rushing around and, if you want something done, ask a busy person, versus the juggle does not need to be a struggle. And how to create that? How with that awareness, how do you intentionally create that?
Yeah, beautiful. Now I'm curious if there's somebody listening who maybe identifies with maybe their juggle is still a struggle, maybe they are still in that crazy, overwhelmed, being pulled in a million directions, aren't doing anything for themselves. If there's somebody listening who is in that place, is there one bit of maybe advice or maybe a practice that you'd recommend, or like a sort of a starting point, I guess, for them?
Yeah. So as women, it is very difficult for us to acknowledge that we need time for ourselves. That is the hardest thing for us as women to do, because we are nurturers, we are givers, we feel guilty, we feel responsible. Whether you have children or not, women have that, we have that natural instinct within us. And whether, if we don't have children, we find other people to often give it to, whether it's work, our boss, our partner, the community, parents who need us, whoever it is. So that is naturally inbuilt in us. And so we find it very, very difficult to to disconnect and to say, you know what, in order to show up for you, I need to show up for me first. And so the thing that I say for every woman who wants to say, as you said, you know, so where do I start? You know, I've got such a busy life. I've got so much going on. I can't possibly find time for myself. I can't possibly create that. You're just crazy. I say you want to take a few minutes every day just to deep breathe. Deep breathing and profound, proper, focused deep breathing is transformative. That simple act. And so if you've got a busy house, I know, you know, over the last year, our lives have all turned upside down. And if you have children, your house is probably quite busy and full with children because they're not at school. So my advice in general is you want to take a few minutes to breathe every day. And if you can't find, you know, a yoga class, or you can't, you know, say, well, I can't set aside 10, 15, 20 minutes every day to breathe and to do some slow, you know, meditation or some yoga movements, the minimum that you can do is when you are in your car, going from errand to errand, or you know, you've got to go pick up this person, you have to go to the supermarket, or you're driving home from work, before you get out the car, sit in the car, no one knows you're yet at your destination, and take 2 or 3 minutes, close your eyes and deep breathe. And I think that every woman can afford herself to do that. And I think that that deep breathing, that calming down, that, you know, reducing your sympathetic nervous system, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering the hormones, lowering your stress hormones, just getting yourself calm, even for 2 or 3 minutes, can absolutely transform how you're feeling. And if you can do it a few times a day, then you will immediately begin to notice the way that you walk into the space. You know, if you're rushing, there's never time to stop and breathe. And you don't realize how much you're rushing, you know, rushing to here, and you've got to go collect the kids, and you've got to, the rush, that is one of the afflictions of our modern society. But if you can break that up with those moments of breath, that's the bare minimum that I think every woman can start implementing.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love it because it's so simple and you don't need anything other than yourself and your breath. And we all are breathing all the time. It's just a matter of making it conscious for a short period, right? Yes. Yes. Okay. Beautiful. So as we're sort of getting ready to wrap up here, I just want to hear from you. Is there anything else that feels important to say? Anything that I haven't asked you? Any other tips or advice or anything that you want to sort of say while we have you here?
Yeah, I think as a mother, and as I said, I've got 5 kids and 2 of them are girls, but I actually don't think it makes a difference whether you have girls or boys. Teaching them those values of the balance, of creating balance, because they see that I do certain things. And even if they don't really understand it, you know, our eldest is 18 and a half and our youngest is nearly 8. So, you know, even if they don't necessarily understand it, seeing things, and we speak a lot at home about women's health and women's health issues, and it's a very big joke that my 13-year-old son knows all about menopause because he hears me working with women, and now that we're working from home via Zoom, he hears the conversations that I'm having with women who are struggling, and it's a big family joke, you know, that my son knows all about menopause, but it's not a bad thing, and I think even it's a good thing. We need to be having these open conversations about women's health, about what we need, about the balance that we need to create. Call on those people to help us, to ask for help when you need it. Help should not be a sign of weakness. And I think that creating your intentional life shouldn't be a sign of weakness. It should be a sign of being empowered. You know, I need time for myself shouldn't be a sign of weakness. I need to have space where there is just silence shouldn't be a sign of weakness. That recharges me, that empowers me to be able to then show up and be, you know, the person I need to be. So I think having the conversations, opening up the conversations, talking to your kids, talking to your partner, your girlfriends, much, but we don't really talk about women's health issues. So just opening up the conversation, I think, is a really important part of the journey. Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, right? That is this podcast. And I think that there's so much power when we open up and when we're just real and honest and we tell our stories and we share from the heart. And I really hope that, I don't hope, I know that there are going to be women listening to this who identify with you and your story and what you've come through. And I think just hearing somebody else who's done it can be so healing and so empowering. So I really just want to thank you for being here with us. Thank you for joining us. For everybody who is listening, if you want to get in touch with Jacqueline, if you want to find out more about her yoga, about all of the beautiful women's health work, about all the menopause support that she currently does, I will make sure all the links for that are in the show notes. So Jacqueline, thank you for being here. I so appreciate you, and I'm really, really grateful.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the reframe, for the language that you're using. It's really, it's so important. So thank you for including me in the conversation.
My pleasure. All of the links mentioned during the episode are down in the show notes. Please make sure to go on over and check them out. Also, please remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and I would be forever grateful if you would go on over and leave us a review on iTunes as well. That's going to help this message reach more women. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Here is to you loving yourself.